So I wanted to share with you my top 7 tips if you're either a recruitment specialist or talent acquisition specialist on how to have the ideal interview. So hopefully you find these a benefit. The first one that I'd say is to enter the discussion, the interview with a calm mind. If we're entering a conversation with that calm and clear mind, then we're going to pick up all the wonderful nuances of the interaction. It also allows us to pick up the things that aren't being said, that although the words mightn't be getting shared with us, the candidates you're interviewing is sharing some of these things with their behavior, but sometimes we just don't pick them up. The second one is to be truly invested in the communication. When we're having these interactions, sometimes we're not actively listening and we're waiting for the next chance to speak. If we've got a script in front of us or some certain information we want to make sure that we get across. So it's important to make sure we're invested in this communication that we're having, truly other people centric. If we're doing that and being present, then that's going to allow us the right opportunity to get all the information, that beautiful information that we're needing throughout this conversation. Point 3 would be to be aware of our own bias, because we all have them, a mix of conscious and unconscious bias that we have, that we bring with us to the interactions that we have, to the interviews that we have. Whether it's affinity bias because the person may have gone to the same high school that we did, or we think we know them, or halo and horns bias because there's an attribute in there that we think that's a really overpowering element or attribute, and that shines a light over everything else. Regardless of the bias, it's important to be aware that we have them, and to remove them from this process is very important. There's lots of ways that we can do that. By making sure that we have enhanced awareness, by making sure we've got an ideal structured candidate profile can help greatly. By also making sure we've got great team representation on the interview processes that we're having, and supporting that with the right training. These items can help remove the bias that we have, that we bring with us to these communication in interactions. Very, very important. The next one that I mentioned is about to take all the non-verbals that we're seeing in context. Sometimes we jump to the instant spot that we think, well, this person's put their hands in their lap, they must be hiding something from us. They might be nervous. That could be a normal characteristic that a candidate could have coming into the interview. Or if they're folding their arms, we may jump to the fact, or looking to the left, that they're hiding something from us. They could just be cold. So let's take all non-verbals in context. It's also important to get a baseline for the way that they communicate, their posture, their gestures, these sort of things, but we'll expand on that a little bit later on. Number 5 is every word has meaning. The words that we use, the words that we don't use, sometimes by choice, but also the ordering of the words is very, very important. We should be looking for those things. If you ask a question of a candidate and you're talking about a period between 2 places of employment, and rather than actually giving you specifics, they say, I worked at company A and then later I worked at company B. Those sort of languages are trying to close gap in time. Or if you ask a question about a qualification and when they completed their qualification, but the response could be, I decided to start that, and then they'll answer on with some additional details. That still doesn't give you the information or the answer that you want. So please be mindful of the words that you get, process those, and if in doubt, continue. Ask that question again. Reframe the question slightly if you need to. Number 6 is to look for signs of comfort and discomfort. So what does that look like? How do we get to that point? So the initial point that I mentioned earlier on is when the candidate's coming in for the interview, make them feel safe and comfortable. We've given them some information up front as to what the interview process would look like. And then when the interview rolls on as well, that first couple of questions, ease them into it. Did you find the place okay? And just some general conversational questions. That allows you to get a feel for the way that they communicate, for the gestures that they use, for the rhythm, speed, volume, and pitch of their voice, all these items. Then when we start getting through the different phases of the interview, you can see if there's any deviations for that, which is really important. But that's why getting that right environment is so important for getting that baseline up front that's going to help us. So focus on that. The last one is about building commitment. And building commitment with candidates throughout the process is, I get questioned this quite regularly, especially from recruiters, on how do we do that, especially when there's competition and things at the moment. People want to be valued, recognized, and as part of that, the whole process is feeling safe. So how do we get them to feel safe? We do that by being dependable in our actions. If we're going to communicate in a certain way in a certain time, then we stick to that. We honor our promises. That's how people then go from likability and building rapport and trust. That, coupled with the way that you're managing the overarching process here, is what can build, it can build solid commitment with the candidates through the process. And I know how incredibly important that is. So I hope some of these tips have been of benefit. The next video I share will be on how do we create that safe environment? How do we get people to feel that they have some choice and power in the interactions? All these. I look forward to sharing them with you. Thanks very much.